Vaccine passport again.
I don't think it's absolutely necessary right now.
As Quebec unveils details about its vaccine passport, Ontario says enough people here are getting vaccinated. Plus,
every occupied classroom at the TDSB will have one of these.
We take you inside a Toronto classroom to see how it plans to keep kids safe with school around the corner. And
his death is directly linked to the actions of the guards.
After 5 years of waiting, the family of Suleiman Fakiri learned just how he died in a correctional facility. Good evening. I'm Farah Morali. COVID-19 cases are beginning to rise once again in Ontario and across many parts of Canada. It's reignited a conversation about proof of immunization. Quebec unveiled details today about what its vaccine passport will look like, but as cases here in Ontario surpass 300 for a fifth straight day, the province says a passport system isn't needed. As Dahlia Ashry tells us, some in the healthcare sector are frustrated.
I think it's a government decision not to have mandatory immunization policies.
With 81% of eligible Ontarians partially vaccinated and nearly 70% fully vaccinated, Ontario's top medical doctor says vaccine passports are not necessary. But not everyone agrees.
As a physician, I've had to show that I've been vaccinated in order to be able to see my patients.
The head of the Ontario Medical Association says out of 43,000 physicians recently surveyed, over 90% support a COVID vaccination passport or certificate, especially as cases in the province begin to climb again.
Having a vaccine certificate will allow for our system to really understand a little bit more clearly where spread can happen and being able to tamp down on that spread moving into what is appearing to be the start of a fourth wave.
The risk is going to rise in September as we head indoors. And all of that will occur without a mandate, without a passport.
As the province tries to recover and reopen economically, the opposition says proof of vaccination is essential.
No shoes, no shirt, no service. A business doesn't have to serve you. A business has always been allowed to set rules to say who they will serve and who they won't serve.
Some experts caution it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, and one ethicist I spoke to says businesses and the health sector should be cautious on the approach taken towards mandatory vaccination and how it might infringe on the rights of employees and patrons.
Are we talking about redeployment, which can be very hard, by the way, in a hospital setting? I mean, redeployment of people's jobs. Are we talking about sacking people and having security escort them out the door? Like, I'm not a lawyer, but I do think that any business that's going to start turning people away individually is going to have to be very, very careful about human rights discrimination.
Today, Quebec unveiled more details about its vaccine passport to access some non-essential services, while Manitoba and Prince Edward Island are rolling out their own passports. But for now, Ontario won't be following suit. Dahlia Ashry, CBC News, Toronto.
In less than a month, students will head back to the classroom. And with those COVID cases increasing, there's a lot of focus on what school boards are doing to make sure students and staff are safe. Today, the Toronto District School Board showed off its upgrades to classroom ventilation systems. But as Kirthana Sasitheran reports, some people worry it's not enough.
Every occupied classroom at the TDSB will have one of these institutional grade HEPA filters. The units are designed to go through and circulate the air, take the air in over the course of the day.
Maya Pachetti walks through a Toronto classroom, retrofitted for the return of students in September. The school board today showed off the HEPA filters that'll be located in classrooms in 583 schools, in addition to the mechanical ventilation system already in place.
This unit ventilator can bring up to 50% fresh air.
Upgrading the school's ventilation system and adding cooling centers in schools is among the numerous ways the TDSB is planning to make schools safer this year.
Enhanced cleaning, wearing a mask. It's all part of the bigger picture. The other advantage is also being able to take the kids outside and doing a lot of learning in the outdoors.
But for some teachers, these measures just aren't enough.
If we had smaller classes, we'd be able to space the kids out even better. The HEPA filter is a great start, but it isn't the be-all and end-all.
That's something opposition leader Andrea Horvath says the Ford government missed out on.
What we don't see in their plan is a identified way to keep people socially distanced, to try to keep kids from being on top of one another. We don't see, a cap on classroom sizes.
For parents sending their kids back to the classroom, class sizes and outdoor space are key.
I would like to see smaller class sizes. I would love it. I know our school has quite a large outdoor space. If they were doing more of the classes outside rather than inside the building. And I would have loved to see over the past year and a half for, some like shelter structures to be set up so that would be an easier thing for teachers to do.
Infectious disease expert Dr. Anna Banerjee says time will tell how well the existing methods will work.
I suspect when schools start that the number of cases of COVID will go up, especially as we seem to be entering a fourth wave. The spacing is really important. The physical distancing, the masks, and the ventilation, that's really critical to keep kids safe.
The kindergarten teacher hopes governments start listening to teachers and educators and bring them to the table before the school year starts to avoid another year of closed in-person learning.
We're in it every day. We love what we do, and we just want to ensure that everything is being done to ensure the safety of the children and the educators.
Kirtan Asasi-Theron, CBC News, Toronto.
Meteorologist Colette Kennedy joins us now with the first look at the forecast. Colette, it was a little bit of everything today. Sunshine, rain, and of course some storms.
Yeah, that's right, Farah. We did have some stormy weather for sure. We're into a kind of pattern where what you can count on is that it's going to be changeable like that, where we'll get some sun at times. That just leads to the daytime heating. And the other thing that is consistent is, boy, oh boy, the humidity in here as well. But that daytime heating can lead to some of that stormy activity that we're seeing. So our highs near 30 degrees in this heat warning that's blanketing the southern and eastern Ontario. Humidex values today close to 35. Tomorrow closer to that 40, so really sticky and intense again. And our lows, we don't get a lot of relief in the overnight hours, right? Because those lows are still, in most cases, there's a few exceptions, but mostly in those low 20s. So daytime highs today, at least compared to yesterday, they came down a little bit. Well, Ottawa, though, you got to point that out at 31, and of course Windsor at 32. We do have some more activity that's going to bubble up as we go into tomorrow in the morning hours and even into the afternoon, coming through the GTA as well. So it's just that kind of pattern. It doesn't rain all day, but when it happens, some heavy downpours in there, but also some strong gusty winds, something else to be aware of. Tonight, 22 for that low. Here we go tomorrow, 30, feeling like 40, Farah.
Thanks, Colette. We have some breaking international news now. A Canadian man detained in China has just been sentenced to 11 years in prison. Michael Spavor has been found guilty of spying and illegally providing state secrets to other countries. In addition to his 11-year prison sentence, he is facing a fine that translates to roughly $11,000 Canadian and deportation. It's not yet clear when he would be deported. Spavor was jailed in late 2018, shortly after Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou was arrested in Vancouver. Another Canadian man, Robert Schellenberg, had his life sentence for alleged drug smuggling upheld in a Chinese court yesterday. 5 years after he died in a Lindsay, Ontario correctional facility, we are finally learning exactly what caused the death of Suleiman Fakiri. The 30-year-old Ajax man who lived with schizophrenia died on the floor of the facility. A new report from the province's chief pathologist shows Fakiri's death was the result of being held face down, pepper sprayed, and hit by guards. Lorenda Redekop now with reaction from his family.
Suleiman Fakiri was repeatedly hit by at least 6 jail guards in a violent struggle in December 2016. Face down with a hood on, shackled and pepper sprayed. Now an official cause of death has been determined. Prone position restraint and musculocutaneous injuries sustained during struggle, exertion and pepper spray exposure in someone with an enlarged heart and worsening schizophrenia.
His death is directly linked to the actions of the guards. There's no mystery. There's no doubt as to how Sully died. He's alive before this incident. He's dead after.
An earlier pathology report 4 years ago listed the cause as unascertained. 2 initial police investigations resulted in no charges. His family kept pushing for answers.
He was a human being. He deserved better.
A former inmate told the Fifth Estate he saw it happen.
They beat him to death. Like, I don't know how else to describe it.
This latest report found there were multiple injuries due to blunt trauma, caused by some combination of correctional officers striking Soliman Fakiri or his body hitting the ground or stationary objects during a violent struggle. None of the injuries were individually fatal, but in combination, the injuries were a significant contributing factor in death. The family's lawyers say this has now been referred back to the Ontario Provincial Police. They want accountability.
The prison guards who caused this still continue to work at the same institution. There have been 0 criminal charges laid. Ontario has not accepted responsibility. The Fakiri family hasn't even received an apology.
The province's Solicitor General's office refused to comment, given an ongoing legal case. The family has filed a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against the ministry and 7 jail staff. The OPP says it's received the pathology report and is reviewing it. It says it sympathizes with the family, who've suffered a great loss.
Fakiri's brother says he wants the OPP to lay criminal charges against the guards involved.
Because they failed everyone, not just my family and not just all Canadians, but Canadians suffer from mental illness.
He says he plans to continue fighting for justice for his brother. A 5-year battle still not over. Lorenda Redicop, CBC News, Toronto.
Manitoba Premier Brian Pallister says he won't run for re-election in 2023.
By stepping aside at the midpoint in our second mandate, I believe this will provide sufficient time for not only for party members to choose a new leader, but for Manitobans to get to know that new leader.
Pallister served as the leader of the Progressive Conservatives for nearly 10 years and led the party to a majority government win in 2016. The Progressive Conservatives were re-elected under Pallister's leadership in 2019. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is resigning. The announcement today comes a week after an Attorney General's report concluded the governor had sexually harassed 11 women who were current or former state employees.
In my mind, I've never crossed the line with anyone. But I didn't realize the extent to which the line has been redrawn.
Cuomo insisted there was no sexual harassment and the information in the report wasn't credible or factual. But he apologized to the women he said he knew he had truly offended. The 3-term Democratic governor will leave office in 14 days.
The
Minister of Transportation says it's improving the Milton line with an all-day service for GO passengers coming from Mississauga.
It'll help get more people home quicker while providing better and more reliable train service. It will also improve the efficient movement of goods, enabling freight and passenger service levels to increase.
The all-day rail service project is part of a new $1.9 billion investment that upgrades tracks and cuts wait times along the Milton line. Minister Alghabra adds the 24/7 service will encourage more commuters to take the train to work. The provincial government is in the middle of an environmental assessment for a new highway. Highway 413 would run across the GTA's northwest and through ecologically sensitive wetlands and forests, including the Nashville Conservation Reserve in Vaughan. It's a patch of habitat for endangered species that environmentalists say needs to stay protected. Samantha Beattie went there to find out what's at stake.
The development of the highway is estimated to cross about 100 to 110 streams and rivers. So we're
University of Guelph biology professor Ryan Norris leads journalists through the Nashville Conservation Reserve.
In this watershed, there's one endangered species called the red-side dace that breeds in cold water streams, slow-moving like this one.
Norris is trying to emphasize the importance of this habitat for fish, butterflies, and amphibians.
You can think of conservation areas like these, really important large ones that are close to, that are in the GTA as habitat islands for a lot of species. They're the last stronghold.
He fears what could happen if the province goes ahead with its plan to build Highway 413. The preferred route stretches from the 407-401 interchange in Halton Hills to Highway 400 in Vaughan and cuts through the reserve in the northwest corner of the city.
So really what this would result in, a highway running through here, is a biodiversity wasteland.
The David Suzuki Foundation organized a tour last week to show the public what could be lost.
And people hear the word wetland or they hear the word forest, they just don't know. Not to blame them, they just don't know. But they come out here and they see Professor Norris talk about the birds and the rare fish, and they get to see the butterfly like you do, then it becomes real for people.
The Ministry of Transportation says it's in the middle of an environmental assessment to be done late next year for the province to consider. But Norris doubts that will be enough to stop the highway from being built. The province also says Highway 413 is essential to accommodate the region's rapid population growth, and that existing highways will be overwhelmed with traffic in the future. But Norris and other environmentalists say the cost to the natural world, the forests, waterways, and wildlife is simply not worth it. Samantha Beatty, CBC News, Toronto.
You are looking at a live shot of downtown Toronto. It is 26 degrees and another humid night in the city. The Humidex feels closer to 34. Let's go back to Colette now for a look at your extended forecast. Colette, with this heat warning, it sounds like we'll be enduring some sticky conditions for days to come.
Yes, we have to get through this week, and that's really the timeline here. It's through the work week, and then as we get towards Friday into the weekend is when we're going to see that mechanism kind of changing, and we'll exchange those air masses. So those of you really looking for some relief, it will be on the way, but it's going to take some patience here. It's going to take some patience with the storminess too, because we're going to be seeing into Wednesday again some thunderstorm activity, and the winds at times, not just the sustained winds, but some gusty winds coming through, especially if you get some of those storms, and some heavy downpours are possible. I'm going to show you kind of where, especially into eastern Ontario. So we hold on to this till the weekend, and then everyone will be able to take a big deep breath and relax a little bit and just not have it be so intolerable. So our outlook through the overnight hours, we are looking at still some action into southwestern Ontario. A few things kind of bubbling up that the remnants will go through the Niagara region, but I am keeping Toronto dry through the overnight. But into tomorrow, as we get towards mid-morning and then into the afternoon as well, again, some storms start to brew. So you got to be aware of that. Some of these may cluster later in the day towards eastern Ontario. And the reason I point that out is because when we look at the amounts, again, it can be highly localized, right, with the thunderstorm. So in between some of these stations, we might see some heavier downpours. But I just wanted to point out that, see that band here? It's stateside, but it's pretty close to Kingston, Gananoque, through that region. You could see some heavier rain there. And also, if we take a look at what's going on towards Windsor and Leamington, you could see some heavier amounts with some of the clusters of storms in your region as well. Your temperatures tonight do not really provide relief, and into tomorrow it's another steamy day with the Humidex up to 41 through that region. And for the GTA, even here, lows not very low, and highs tomorrow at least close to 30, but it's the Humidex that's going to be so intense with it up at 40. Thursday, kind of similar. Should be more in the morning hours where we would see any of this thunderstorm activity, and then we should dry. Midday, a few showers on Friday, that's about it. And then there it is for the weekend, looking very different compared to the week.
Weather is brought to you by Train, to cool and clean the air in your home. It's hard to stop a train. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
The province is announcing an investment of $240 million to support children with special needs.
This investment will enable more children to have access to critical rehabilitation services when they need them. Whether it is physiotherapy, occupational therapy, or speech and language therapy.
MPP Mary Lee Fullerton was in Belleville today at the Quinte Children's Treatment Centre for the announcement. The funding will be spent over the next 4 years.